This is not the message I originally had planned for this morning, but I just felt led to speak about prayer this morning. And it was led to the prayer of Jabez. I have a story to tell you. One Sunday morning at a small southern church, the new pastor called on one of his older deacons to lead in the opening prayer. The deacon stood up, bowed his head, and said, "Lord, I hate buttermilk." The pastor opened one eye and wondered where this was going. The deacon continued, "Lord, I hate lard." Now the pastor was totally perplexed. The deacon continued, "Lord, I ain't too crazy about plain flour, but after you mix them all together and bake them in a hot oven, I just love biscuits." You like biscuits? Prayer. Some people have looked at the prayer of Jabez. Let me read it to you again. "And Jabez was more honorable than his brothers. His mother named him Jabez because I gave birth to him in pain. Jabez cried out to God, 'Oh, that you would bless me and enlarge my territory. Let your hand be with me and keep me from harm so that I will be free from pain.' And God granted his request." I have heard too many times where this has been preached about, "Oh, that you would bless me and enlarge my territory," as a prosperity message. This is not a prosperity message. It's not a promise that if you say, "Lord, enlarge my territory," you're going to have that brand new Cadillac sitting in your driveway because something came along and put all this money in your pocket. This is not a prosperity message. When Jabez was praying, "Lord, enlarge my territory," he was not praying, "Lord, make me filthy rich." If you notice, originally he said, "Lord, bless me." There's no real request in there, just, "Lord, bless me." How many times have we prayed that people would be blessed? I received a text message the other morning, and it was from our district superintendent, and it just said, "Greg, I'm thinking of you today. I pray that the Lord will have favor on your life for this day." And then he went on with some other things that really made my heart jump with joy a little bit because of some things that he requested in that text message. But there was that thing, "I pray that the Lord would have favor on you for this day." Lord, bless that person. It's a prayer that we need to pray for ourselves. "Lord, bless me." I don't find that a prosperity prayer. I don't find it a selfish prayer. Because the simple fact is, if God is going to bless me, He has already promised He wants me to be filled with joy. He has said, "I came that my people would have a life and have it more abundantly." Now that doesn't mean in earthly riches. That means in His life and His power being manifested in our life. So Lord, bless me today. Give me what I need to keep going through this day. There's some days we need more of a blessing than others. Let's just face it. But Lord, bless me. Well, I've had people, I'll be talking to them on the phone, all of a sudden say, "May you have a blessed day." Well, that's kind of that prayer. Lord, bless this person that day. Whatever it means in your life, Lord, bless me today. Give me the power I need to get through the day. Give me the guidance I need to make decisions today. Give me the strength just to keep going no matter what's happening. Lord, bless me today. No matter what comes my way, you and I together can handle it. Lord, bless me. That's what I get out of the first part of that prayer. Well, then he goes on and he says, "Enlarge my influence." I've looked at that and I thought, that's where the prosperity comes in. Lord, enlarge my territory. Jabez, there was a city called Jabez. It was on the coast. And I think maybe in King James, Jabez said, "Enlarge my coasts." And so literally it sounded like he was saying, "Lord, give me more land. Give me more property. Give me more of this wonderful coast here. Give me more seafront property." And it sounds almost like a selfish deal. But you have to remember, Jabez was more honorable than his brothers. Now that tells me that somewhere in there, Jabez was probably a very generous person. He probably gave and gave and gave till it hurt. But it seemed that the more he gave, the more God gave back to him. And so I really think his prayer was, Lord, enlarge my territory so I will have more to help other people with. I will have more to glorify you with. Now, I've looked at this thing about enlarging my territories, and I thought, what does that mean in our lives, in our daily life today? And it looks to me like, Lord, give me big goals and help me to reach them. We were talking this morning in men's Sunday school, that messy class, Men of Eastridge Sunday School. We're talking about messy men of the Bible. And we were talking there about Abraham and all that he had done, and then Isaac coming along, following in his father's footsteps. And Isaac redug the wells that his father had originally dug that had been buried by, was it the Philistines, David? Help me there. Yeah, by the Philistines. My mind's going too many circles this morning. And then Isaac reopened those wells, but then he dug more wells. He kept digging more wells. Everywhere he went, he dug a well. Enlarged his scope, enlarge your territory. Make it so that you can feed more. Make it so that you can have more cattle that are getting nourishment and whatnot. So I look at this and say, Lord, enlarge our influence. We're all people of influence. And somewhere in there, with the blessing, with the territory being enlarged, our influence increases. I sat and talked to a gentleman this week who's probably mid to late 50s. I think he's probably 58 years old. And we were just talking and sharing. He doesn't know me that well. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, he went, about half the time, I don't know what I'm doing or if I'm doing it right. And I'm thinking, you're a person who makes decisions that affects all kinds of people. And half the time, you don't know what you're doing. Half the time, you don't think about, I'm glad you're not in charge of my life. That was my first thought. And then I thought, wait a minute. You do have an influence on me because of our relationship. And he said, I don't know how you do it as a pastor. And I said, well, about half the time, I'm not sure I'm doing it right. Now, you don't want to hear that from your pastor, do you? But a few years ago, I had a question about how to do something administratively in the church that I had never run into before. And so I went to an older friend of mine who had been a district superintendent on 2 different districts, had pastored some really large churches, and I said to him, how do I do this? Give me a clue. And he said, I can tell you one thing. He gave me just one sentence that solved the whole problem, and I knew exactly what to do. But he said, about half the time, I don't know if I'm doing it right or not. I thought, wow. Boy, we need this prayer. Lord, bless me. Lord, give me big goals, and Lord, help me to reach them. Big goals. Enlarge my influence. Dig a new well. I've been looking at our church and the size of our church. And one of the things that I got from the DS this week was, and he'll be here in a few weeks and probably talk more about this, I don't know. But he's putting together a hand-picked group of pastors to work together for a year and to share on church growth and to study about church growth methods and just to share what we're doing with each other. And that just was awesome, that a guy who's almost 69 is being invited to join a group like that with probably a bunch of guys who aren't even dry behind the ears yet. And to be part of that group, I felt honored. But I had been praying, Lord, help us increase our numbers. Lord, increase our territory. Lord, increase our influence. And then I've had a couple conversations lately with people, and board members are going to start shooting me here in just a second. But I've had a couple conversations. One person said, you know, Pastor, I can't be there on Sundays, but if you could have a service on Monday or Tuesday night, I'd be there every week. And I mentioned that to another person here just in the last week, and they went, that would work. Because there's another person who can't be here very often on Sundays. And I thought, Lord, is that part of this prayer of enlarge our influence? Enlarge our territory? Now, some of you are going and saying, oh, Man, another night out a week, we can't handle it. Wouldn't be for you. You know why? Because it would be the same identical service we do on Sunday morning. Now, if you wanted to hear the fantastic message again, that's fine with me. But it would be using the building more with smaller groups and seeing some growth of spiritual needs being met among people who need it. So when I start praying things like, Lord, enlarge our territory. Lord, enlarge our influence. Lord, give us some goals. Then I start thinking, what about our personal lives? What about my personal life? Not just my church life, but what about my personal life? And I'm thinking, but I'm old. I'm one of 25 pastors on this district that could retire any day and give the district superintendent insanity because he'd have too many churches to fill all at once. Well, I'm not planning on retiring. Don't get any thoughts there. I had one guy yesterday say, man, I'm 80. I'm still going. I don't plan on retiring. I thought, well, good grief. Okay, that's a goal to run to. Big goals. Big goals personally. We look at those of us who are more mature and our goals start getting less and less and fewer. But if I'm really looking at God's words correctly in the book of Acts, when the Holy Spirit came, what happened? The old men dreamed dreams. The young men started having visions. It's usually the other way around. And so if everybody starts having some dreams, even for their personal life, goals they would like to have, even if it's to be able to walk around the block. That's one of my goals now, to be able to walk down to Guilford and back around and up Westminster and back home. I haven't been able to do that for a while. That's a goal. I mean, it's 2/10 of a mile to where you guys are going to be. And can I walk that? I couldn't last Sunday. Or what day was it I couldn't walk it, Jennifer? Monday, whatever it was. But that's my goal, to be able to walk to their new house, 2/10 of a mile. But what about my spiritual goals? We need to develop spiritual goals and then pray, Lord, increase my spiritual influence. But then what did Jabez say? Put your hand, let me get there, right there, with my hand. Let your hand be with me. We usually think of your hand being, God's hand being with us to protect us, over us, beside us. But he said, Lord, let your hand be with me. Well, I got to tell you, the thought of going to a service on a Monday or Tuesday night that's identical to Sunday morning, even though it's not a lot of extra studying and preparation during the week, it's a lot of extra energy, and it's almost overwhelming, the thought. When I start thinking about the fact that Jabez prayed and said, Lord, increase my coast, that meant a lot more property. It meant a lot more cattle. It meant a lot more grass mowing. It meant a lot more administrative just to keep things going. It probably would get overwhelming at times. And so what is his prayer? Lord, let your hand be with me. His prayer became, Lord, give me what I need to keep going through this overwhelming process that could destroy me if I allowed it to. But because you've asked me to pray this prayer, because you're opening these doors, you have got to carry me through. Wow. When I thought about that part of the prayer, it just made me remember all the things I've heard all my life. God ain't going to put you where He can't, what was it? God ain't going to plant you where He can't grow you, something like that. If God asks you to do something, He's going to give you the strength to do it. There's a lot of scriptures that point that way. And so it just reminds me that when we get involved in things, no matter what it is, Lord, bless me. Lord, increase the influence. Lord, help me to handle the new responsibility, even if it's a personal one, to change my personal life. Lord, give me what I need to do this so I don't fail. Because without you, I'm going to fall apart and I'm going to fail miserably. Now, there's some people within the sound of my voice this morning, and I'm not just talking about here in the sanctuary, I'm talking about online as well, who have shared some things here just recently that they have some dreams for the future. And I believe they're God-given dreams that these people have. Some of them are pretty high and lofty. And I look at my own life and I think, wow, if God came to me and said, do this, I'd probably cave in. Except for one thing. Lord, keep your hand with me. That says that He's going to walk with me through anything. There was a story on Facebook the other day, and of course, if it's on Facebook, it's true. But the video was there to prove it. It was showing these little kids doing a ballet. They were probably 3, 4, maybe 5 years old. And this one girl just panicked and froze. Couldn't move. Her dad jumped up from where he was sitting and went up and started dancing with her. And she made it through successfully with a big smile on her face. I mean, you can see the video, and it's this awesome moment in this family's time, and in this whole program's time. As I looked at that and I'm thinking about this message, I'm thinking, Lord, when I'm about ready to panic, Lord, when I'm about ready to freeze in my steps, Lord, when I'm about ready to give up, jump up out of your seat and come up and hold my hand and walk right with me through the whole thing. Lord, put your hand on me. But then I look at the next part of this prayer, and I start finding this really interesting. Keep me from harm so that I will be free from pain. Keep me from harm. Well, when you get out doing things, you can be harmed. When you get out doing things, and I've seen so many cases lately, I got to tell you, the other guy is ferocious. The Bible tells us Satan's like a roaring lion who will chew up who he can. He's seeking who he can devour. I've seen so many cases lately where people are getting involved in really good things, not necessarily even through their church, but through other places and facets of life, and really doing things that carry God's love out into the world, and all of a sudden they're just smacked down by something that happens in their life. And they're hurting and they're aching, and they just can't do anything anymore. And so Jabez says, Lord, keep me from evil. But also in that prayer, there's a, Lord, keep me from caving into temptation. And I look at this temptation thing. I used to think that only young people had temptations. I used to think it was only young people who could cave in, because you think of the temptations, you think of the evil, wicked things that happen in the world, the evil, wicked things that we can get involved in, and that's the things that youth get to because it's exciting. But us more mature folks, middle-aged folks on up, have all these temptations as well. Temptations to give in. Temptations to not necessarily do anything wrong, but to give in to a not caring attitude. To give in to a why bother anymore. It's a real temptation. Why bother anymore? And so Jabez says, Lord, keep me from evil. Keep me from caving into temptation. I think of the Lord's Prayer. Lord, lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Same prayer. Lord, keep me from evil. Lord, keep me from caving into anything that could destroy me spiritually. But then I look at this other part of this prayer where he says that I won't be in pain. Well, none of us like pain. But I really got to researching this thing, and part of this prayer was, Lord, keep me from evil. Keep me from doing evil. Keep me from caving into temptation so that I don't harm anybody else as well. And I really thought about that one, and I thought, all of us are people of influence. We all are involved with other people around us. And if I have a day where I've caved in and I'm having an I don't care attitude, and somebody calls me and I just kind of brush them off because I am not feeling like I care, then that's going to affect them and cause pain in their life because maybe they really needed an encouraging word that day, and that's just going to mushroom because then if they get down, it's going to affect somebody else. If I go out and do something really bad, people who have looked up to me spiritually will say, well, if he can't handle it, then I can't either. And it will begin to harm them as well. And so that becomes a real serious prayer. Lord, keep me from doing evil so that I don't harm anybody else. I keep thinking of that TV ad from a few years ago that was talking about people who are depressed. Who does depression hurt? The entire family. If one person in a household gets down and depressed, it affects the whole household. It's that same type of thing in my spiritual life. If I get down spiritually, my attitude starts affecting those around me. So Lord, keep me from evil so that I'm not in pain and so that my pain doesn't cause others pain. I just keep remembering, temptation can lead us to harm others. And then what does the Bible say? God granted his request. I've looked at this thing and I thought, what was it about the life of Jabez that got this response? What was it about Jabez that got God to say, he's more honorable than his brothers? He was from the tribe of Judah. He was born in pain. His mother must have had some guilt over his birth. He was from the royal lineage going to David and on to Jesus. He was probably a scribe by trade. In the town of Jabez, there were a lot of scribes. There were a lot of well-trained men. People who studied the Scriptures. They were well taught. I'm wondering if it could be that he was so well thought of that they honored him by naming the town after him. Why did God grant his request? What made him stand out? There's only 2 verses in the Bible about this guy. There's nothing else in history, but yet right there in the whole lineage of a whole bunch of people, it just says who begat who and who came from who and all that stuff. All of a sudden it says Jabez. 2 full verses about him. What made him different than anybody else? He was a man of prayer. He cried out to God. I started looking at biblical prayers. They may not have been voiced in these words, but at least in between the lines. Lot's wife, I don't want to leave. Jonah, it stinks in here, get me out. Jacob, I will not let you go until you bless me. Solomon, if I'm so smart, how did I end up getting married to all of these women? Jabez, bless me. Nothing in between the lines there. Just simply, bless me. He was a man of integrity. The Bible says he was more honorable than his brethren. I can just imagine that Jabez was the type of person, not only was a man of prayer, but if Jabez said, I'm going to take care of this, Jabez did it. If Jabez saw a situation that could go one way or the other way, he always did it the right, honorable, above board, open, honest way, so that there was no question behind the scenes what he was doing. A man of full integrity. We were dealing with some issues on the District Church Properties Board yesterday, and one of the things that kept coming back over and over again in the conversation was, but let's make sure that everything on this situation is done above board so that there are no questions asked later about why did they do what they did and how they did it. Let's be people of integrity on this board today. He was a man of integrity. He was a man of great faith, obviously, because he cried out to God, because he said, Lord, bless me, and he just knew that God was going to do something for him. We need to be people of faith who just, when God says do it, we just do it. You know, it's hard to step out on faith. It's really hard if God says to do something, just to take that step and just go do it and trust him for the outcome. I kind of see that here with him saying, Lord, enlarge my coast. It'd be so easy just to sit there and become status quo, keep doing the same thing he was doing day in and day out because he was successful. But Lord, let my influence begin reaching out to others and more people so I can share your love with them. That's what the church is all about. That's what Christianity is all about. That's what our personal lives are all about. Sharing God's good news with other people. We have to be people of faith to do that. I believe that Jabez was a generous man. Every place in the Bible where I find a person who was of wealth, I also find that they were generous towards others. They were generous towards God. God granted his request to bless him, to enlarge his territory, to protect him, to keep him from evil. He must have been generous. He was a man of action. You don't pray a prayer like, Lord, enlarge my coast, and then go sit down in the corner and do nothing. You got to take some action. You don't sit at home and say, Lord, clean my house, and expect this big vacuum just to go and suck all the junk up. It's, Lord, give me the strength to clean my house. And then you take action to do it. Or, Lord, give me the money to hire that maid to come and do it. One or the other. Take your choice. He stood on the promises of God. And God granted his prayer. Lord, bless me. Lord, enlarge my territory. Lord, keep your hand with me. Keep me from harm so that I will be free from pain, and I won't cause pain with anybody else. And Lord, when you see that we mean business, when you see that we are people of faith, when you see, Father, that we really want this in our lives, grant our request because you know you're going to get the glory. Miriam, I can't even remember what we're singing on this one. The Spirit